Here is the accurate and complete English translation of your original Vietnamese passage. Following your request for a detailed, faithful, and stylistically consistent translation, blank, underscore, blank. What would you do if one day a security guard was mocked by the entire company, labeled as unqualified, had coffee thrown at him, and was kicked out of an area reserved for degree holders? But just 1 week later, that same man stepped onto the stage and spoke as the new CEO of the entire corporation. This isn't a movie. This is the real story of Elijah Moore, the man who chose silence to remember, who chose to stand in the shadows and watch the artificial light of those in power, only to emerge at the perfect moment to change everything. This story isn't just about a CEO in disguise. It's about a society that still measures a person's worth by the uniform they wear. A society where silence has become complicit, and sometimes a simple act of kindness can shake an entire system. Pushpin, hold on to your emotions, because what you're about to hear might make you take a hard look at yourself and at the place where you work. Blank, underscore, blank, blank, underscore, blank. 7:58 a.m. Ground floor, Valor Tech Corp headquarters. A 48-story glass tower in the heart of the city shimmered in the glow of early morning sunlight. The scent of freshly polished wood blended with the rich aroma of espresso from the barista counter created an atmosphere of suffocating luxury, where power, appearance, and status were the only languages understood. And in that flawless place, Elijah Moore, a black man in a faded navy blue security uniform, was bent over, carefully wiping down the marble table near the main entrance. He worked in silence, each motion precise and measured, as if he had done this his entire life. He didn't know that today, everything was about to begin. Are you kidding me? A sharp, cold voice like a razor rang out behind him. Clara Jensen, head of human resources, blonde hair curled to perfection, form-fitting Prada dress in ash gray, a gleaming nameplate reading HR executive pinned to her chest, stood with arms crossed, eyes skimming over Elijah as if spotting a system error in need of debugging. This is the guest reception area, not a parking lot. Why is there a stain here? Can't you see anything? Elijah turned around, still bowing slightly. I just finished wiping it down, ma'am. Clara stared straight at him. Then, without another word, she raised the nearly full cup of coffee in her hand and slammed it down on the table. Bang! The paper cup hit the marble with a thud, hot coffee splattering across the surface and dripping onto the floor. The cup rolled a few times before stopping at the edge of Elijah's shoe. A frozen moment. The entire lobby, usually buzzing with footsteps, ringing phones, and cheerful greetings, went utterly still, as if flash frozen in time. A few nearby paused mid-step, but no one spoke. Eyes peered discreetly through glass walls, silently, yet with a quiet indifference. Now clean it again, Clara ordered, not shouting, but hissing with the authority of someone long accustomed to command. I don't care where you come from, but here at Valor Tech, we have standards, and those standards don't include people who can't grasp what clean even means. No one intervened, not a single word of protest. The receptionist behind the counter tried to keep a neutral expression, though her lips curled ever so slightly at the corners. 2 other employees, 1 man, 1 woman, secretly tapped their phones to record, then swiftly tucked them away as if nothing had happened. Everyone chose silence. Elijah didn't respond. He bent down, picked up the empty cup with bare hands, and began wiping the spilled coffee with a microfiber cloth he always kept neatly folded in his pocket. Each movement was slow, patient, no sighs, no signs of anger. He didn't look at Clara, but in his silent gaze, there was something deeper than fury, a kind of acknowledgement, a quiet promise that everything happening right now was being recorded perfectly. A young female engineer walking by, Linda, from the AI development department, paused briefly when she caught sight of the scene. She clutched her folder tighter, eyes dropping in discomfort, lacking the courage to speak up, but unable to tear her eyes away from Elijah's firm, strange, unshakable gaze. Clara walked away as if she had just corrected a malfunction in the machine she managed. The coffee stain was gone, but the humiliation remained. Blank, underscore, blank. blank, underscore, blank. Exactly 8 a.m. As the revolving glass door of Valor Tech closed behind Clara, Elijah finally straightened up gently. The cloth in his hand was soaked with coffee. He didn't wipe his face. He didn't brush off his shirt. He simply dropped the paper cup into the recycling bin, then turned and walked toward the security monitoring room in the basement. No one knew that the hallway he walked through at that moment, with its stark white halogen lights, chrome-plated direction signs, and the steady click of leather shoes from middle management. It was once his domain. 3 years ago, Elijah Moore had graduated with a degree in technology and corporate ethics from the University of Cambridge, and was the youngest black scholar ever invited to speak at the European Tech Leadership Forum. He had once been a name followed by international investors. But after the death of his mother, the only black woman ever to sit on Valortech's board, Elijah disappeared from the media radar. Not because he had failed, but because he was preparing to return, in a way no one would expect. 10 days earlier, during a private dinner at a suburban estate, Elijah had sat across from his father, Nathaniel Moore, chairman of Valor Tech and founder of the multi-billion-dollar empire. "I want to start over. From the bottom," Elijah said, his eyes steady, his voice unwavering. "Not through connections, not through reputation, but through observation. I want to see your company, Dad, when you're not around." Nathaniel had remained silent for a long time. Not because he didn't believe in his son, but because he had never imagined such a brutally honest form of testing. "What if you're disrespected? I won't retaliate. What if you're humiliated? I'll remember. And if the truth turns out worse than you think?" Elijah had only smiled. "Then, it's time we reprogram the way this empire runs." Now, dressed in a slightly tight security uniform, Elijah worked night shifts, quietly listening to every conversation that passed through the halls. He stood at the front door each morning, bowing his head to greet every person, remembering who smiled, who turned cold, who deliberately avoided eye contact as if he didn't exist. He overheard conversations laced with prejudice. "Do they just hire anyone for security now? There's something shady about him. He doesn't look tech at all." But he didn't react. He didn't write anything down. He didn't respond. He recorded everything in memory, through observation, and with deliberate silence. And then, what struck Elijah even more than the insults was the complicity, the silence, the conscious choice of the majority to remain uninvolved. Only one person, Linda, a young engineer, greeted him each morning with genuine eye contact. She had once handed him a bottle of water when he stood soaked in the rain. No big gestures, no performative kindness, just treating him like a human being. And for Elijah, that was enough to remember differently. That evening, after finishing his shift, Elijah returned to his small rented apartment in the city's industrial South Side. He hung up his uniform, wiped his shoes clean with a fresh cloth, then sat down at his desk. On the table sat a logo-less laptop, open to a private tracking spreadsheet. Blank, underscore, blank. Day 1 to 3. Clara Jensen 2 verbal outbursts. 1 act of humiliation. Travis Beckett 1 denial of entry via main hall. 1 public insult in front of peers. Reception department 3 mocking incidents. 2 refusals to assist. Blank, underscore, blank. Next to the laptop was a sealed envelope with the Valor Tech logo. Stamped, classified, for future CEO only. Elijah ran his fingers along the envelope's edge, then left it untouched. "Not yet," he whispered to himself. "There are still a few more truths that need to come to light." Blank, underscore, blank, blank, underscore, blank. Wednesday morning. The sky was shrouded in mist. Valor Tech awoke to the sounds of automatic security gates and the rhythmic clicks of leather shoes on granite floors. Hundreds of employees passed through the fingerprint and keycard-operated turnstiles, hurried, polished, and cold, like a flawlessly running machine. Elijah Moore, still wearing his worn security uniform, stood by the front reception desk. He greeted each person with a quiet gaze. A few responded with a rushed nod. Most ignored him, or worse, avoided his eyes. At exactly 8:07, Travis Beckett arrived, Senior Operations Director at Valor Tech, strong stride. White shirt crisply pressed, dark gray suit, Slim striped black tie, a textbook product of the system, confident, arrogant, and unforgiving. As he approached, Travis paused at the sight of Elijah helping a new employee with a jammed glass door. His eyes swept Elijah from head to toe like scanning for a flaw in the blueprint. "Hey," Travis called out, irritation barely hidden. "What are you doing in the main lobby area?" Elijah turned calmly. "I was assigned to assist with reception this morning." Travis scoffed and stepped closer, closing the space between them to less than a meter. "You're a security guard. Your job is to stand outside, not wander around zones reserved for senior management. Here, everyone has a place. And, this place isn't meant for the directionless." The words weren't loud, but they were loud enough. Loud enough for the two receptionists typing on their keyboards to stop mid-stroke. Loud enough for the woman exiting the second elevator to slow down and glance over. And loud enough to make the viewer's chest tighten. Because it wasn't a shout. It was a calculated dismantling of a human's worth. Elijah didn't respond right away. He simply stood there, his face expressionless. But his eyes locked on Travis like a mirror too opaque to penetrate. "Would you like me to return to the entrance, sir?" "It's not a request. It's an order," Travis said, turning on his heel, but not without adding one final jab. "And next time, if you want to be inside, make sure you have access clearance. We don't wander here." Elijah walked slowly toward the door. But with every step, a new mental note was etched into memory. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Travis Beckett. Enforces territorial division based on appearance. Demonstrates condescending behavior. Equates social value to service-based roles. Blank. Underscore. Blank. In that moment, as Elijah stood at the glass doors, cold wind brushing against his shoulder, he understood something crystal clear. This is the heart of the problem. Not individual people, but the way an entire system is designed to ensure that people like him forever stand outside the door. Around 9:30 a.m., while monitoring security cameras on floor 14, Elijah watched Travis enter a conference room with several project directors. One person rushed to pull out his chair. Another poured him water, deferred to his lead. Travis nodded, pointed to the presentation screen, and began talking about strategic vision, about a humanistic and diverse company culture. The room applauded, and Elijah, seated alone in the technical room, watching through a screen, smiled faintly, because what was being spoken was in complete contradiction to what was being lived. Blank. Underscore. Blank. 3 days passed. Elijah continued showing up for work every morning. Never late, never absent, his security uniform pressed, shoes polished, and demeanor humble. He didn't speak much, never complained, and showed no signs of resentment. But inside, everything was being observed and recorded, like an architect quietly redrawing the blueprint of a building cracked at its foundation. Valor Tech was an empire. With over 2,000 employees, it proudly branded itself as a pioneer in ethical technology and AI for humanity. But Elijah had come to realize, for humanity, here, never included people like him. On night duty at the back gate, he saw Clara stepping out of a luxury car. She tossed a plastic bottle onto the ground right in front of him and barked coldly. "Pick that up, and wipe off the tire marks while you're at it. I hate mud on stone tiles." On early morning shifts, he saw a white intern arrive late and still be welcomed with smiles and a cup of hot coffee. While he, when caught resting for 5 minutes on the steps due to a mild fever, received a call from the head of security reprimanding him for damaging the company's image. Once, he entered the records room to retrieve the security logbook. A technician stared at him and whispered to a colleague, "That guard keeps wandering around. Kinda sketchy, isn't he?" They had no idea that the man they called sketchy was someone who could terminate their personnel files with a single click. What hurt Elijah the most wasn't the insults. It was the complicit silence. The employees walking by when Clara shouted at him. They turned away, pretending to be busy. The receptionist who heard Travis say, "This place isn't for people like you," just lowered her head and typed faster. The young engineers who smirked when Elijah knocked on an office door simply to say, "Someone left their car lights on." Everyone seemed programmed not to see, not to hear, not to respond. And Elijah realized, This was no longer about individuals. It was a system that had automated discrimination. And yet, amidst the turned faces, there was one gaze that lingered, Linda's. One late afternoon, it started raining suddenly. Elijah stood beneath the guard's canopy when he saw Linda rushing out, arms wrapped around damp folders. Without thinking, he pulled a small collapsible umbrella from his pocket, stepped over, and held it above her. "You don't have to," Linda said with a soft smile. "I do," Elijah replied, quietly. They walked a short distance together. When they reached her car, Linda turned to him. "I don't know what's going on, but I've seen it. The way they look at you. The way they dismiss you." Elijah cut her off with a nod. "I've seen it too, and I'm still waiting to see who'll have the courage not to look away." Linda didn't say anything else. But Elijah knew. Those words had just planted a seed. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Friday, 11:45 a.m. 15th floor, technical conference wing. Elijah had been assigned to assist with VIP area security, which, in truth, meant standing silently in a corner of the hallway to ensure no unauthorized individuals entered the space where the senior tech directors were meeting. He stood there in silence. His uniform was slightly wrinkled from the rainy morning. Sweat gathered at his brow. In front of him, frosted glass doors. And inside, white men in tailored shirts are discussing how to use AI to improve HR efficiency. They spoke of tech ethics, social equity, and making the company more human-centric. Just meters away stood a black security guard, quietly mocked, unnoticed by all. A group of young engineers came out into the hallway during break. Among them was Jason, a senior developer, well known for being witty and friendly. If you were on his friend list. Jason spotted Elijah checking the emergency exit and turned to his colleagues. "Hey, does anyone know what this guy even does? Probably undercover head of CIA security." One joked. "Maybe an experimental AI. That face never changes." Another sneered. Laughter erupted. Elijah turned, gaze still calm. Jason stepped closer, feigning seriousness. "Boss, I'm late for my sunbathing shift. Mind letting me pass?" He patted Elijah on the shoulder before stepping into the elevator, a pat disguised as playful. But Elijah knew too well. It was a familiar tactic, a way to claim space and establish rank. Later, when Elijah returned to the lobby to submit his duty report, he overheard a short conversation in the men's restroom. "Have you seen the new guard? Dude acts like he's some big deal." "Yeah, maybe he thinks he's gonna work his way up to something here." "Work his way up? Haha. This place has elevators, but no stairs for his kind." The flushing toilet muffled the last words. But Elijah heard enough. He didn't get angry. He didn't respond. He simply stepped out, pulled a small notebook from his breast pocket, and wrote, blank, underscore, blank. Day 5. Jason L. Developer. Covert discrimination. Mockery disguised as friendly banter. Subordinate of Clara, possibly aligned in mindset. Assessment. Not dangerous, but representative of the hidden prejudice class. Blank. Underscore, blank. That night, back at his apartment, Elijah stood before the mirror. Wrinkled uniform, dusty shoes, a tired face, but eyes still burning bright. He thought of his mother, the former head of strategic planning, the woman who had once been removed from the executive board nomination because she lacked the executive presence aligned with the company image. She had left the company quietly, died of cancer 2 years later. Elijah would never forget the look in her eyes the last time they met. Don't destroy the system, son. Rebuild it, from the inside. Blank. Underscore, blank. Blank. Underscore, blank. Monday morning. A new week had just begun. But Valor Tech Corp had been buzzing with activity since 6:30 a.m. Cleaning staff were called in earlier than usual. The flower arrangements in the 18th floor conference room were ordered to be completely replaced. The reception lighting system was checked 3 times. Even the coffee machine was swapped out for a more expensive brand. At 7:12 a.m., an internal message pinged across the company's system. Blank. Underscore, blank. Bell announcement. Chairman Nathaniel Moore will make an unannounced visit to headquarters this morning. blank, underscore, blank. Everything shifted. Travis Beckett was the first to stride into the lobby, donning his PR mode smile, crisp white shirt, a subtle hint of Bulgari cologne trailing each step. He walked a full lap of inspection, eyes scanning every position, not forgetting to glance toward Elijah, who stood near the revolving doors. "Watch yourself," Travis whispered, in the tone of a man instructing a pawn. "Don't mess up the aesthetics. If the big boss sees a guard slacking, it won't end well." Elijah simply nodded, gaze calm as always. But in his mind, a new door creaked open. "Let's see who keeps their mask on when my father shows up." Blank, underscore, blank. On the 12th floor, Clara Jensen stood in front of the women's restroom mirror, fixing her hair for the 5th time. She messaged her assistant, blank, underscore, blank. Memo. Reprint the 2024 HR strategy. Add that cultural diversity initiative section I mentioned. The chairman loves those humanitarian angles. Blank, underscore, blank. Everyone thought they were preparing to impress. No one knew they were about to be judged. Blank, underscore, blank. At 8:40 a.m., a black SUV pulled up at the main entrance. Every department head was already assembled in the lobby like a ceremonial welcome committee. The door opened. Nathaniel Moore stepped out, nearly 70 years old, silver hair, neatly combed, a deep navy suit, sharply tailored, a face carved in steel, once known as a tech titan whose mere appearance could send stock markets rippling. Behind him, 2 senior aides and a private security detail. One glance was enough for anyone to recognize that his presence carried weight. Travis stepped forward quickly, hand outstretched. "Sir, it's an honor to welcome you back to headquarters." Nathaniel didn't shake his hand. He walked past Travis as though a cold wind had swept across an unclean windowpane. The lobby fell silent. Clara descended from the upper floor in a rush, flashing her brightest smile. "Mr. Moore, we've just updated the internal training model. You'll be very pleased to." Nathaniel raised one hand calmly, yet with commanding finality. "Let me speak first." No one dared interrupt. He walked to the center of the lobby, surveying the space. "Today," he began, his voice clear, not loud, but charged with a gravity that pulled every ear toward him. "I'm not here to check on performance or revenue. I'm here for something far more important, the integrity of an organization. And today, the person who will take over as the next CEO is already here among you." Silence crystallized in the air. "That's right," Nathaniel continued, his gaze scanning the suddenly uneasy crowd. "My son, the heir to Valor Tech, the man who will lead this company next, is standing among you." Travis blinked. Clara froze mid-step. They looked around. Everyone looked around. Eyes darted from senior execs to department heads, from young engineers to junior assistants. No one fit the image of the heir. No one, except one man. The black man standing beside the glass doors, still in his security uniform, eyes never once leaving Nathaniel. Nathaniel turned, looked directly at Elijah, and smiled. "Elijah, come forward. Blank, underscore, blank, blank, underscore, blank." The air in the grand lobby turned thick. Every pair of eyes, from the front desk to the upper echelons of management, locked onto the glass doors. Where Elijah Moore still stood, he said nothing. He simply walked slowly, deliberately, not rushing, not boasting, yet each step landed like a blow to the pride of those who had once laughed in his face. Clara Jensen, gripping the staircase railing, had gone pale as paper. Travis Beckett, who had been smiling just 15 minutes ago, now took half a step back, eyes fixed on Elijah as though facing a nightmare taking human form. Elijah stopped before his father, Chairman Nathaniel Moore. Nathaniel gave a slight nod. "Allow me to introduce Elijah Moore, my son. And starting today, the new CEO of Valor Tech Corporation." No applause, no murmurs, only silence, heavy, tense, and painful. Not everyone knew who Elijah was, but almost everyone had seen him. Not on a podium, but on the floor, under the awning, beside the scanner, at the garage gate, near the restroom, by the service elevator. They had ignored him, mocked him, assigned him errands as if he were a shadow. And now, that shadow was brighter than them all. Elijah stepped onto the small presentation platform in the center of the lobby. He didn't change clothes, still wore the same security uniform, worn shoes, name tag reading, security, Moore, still pinned on his chest. Yet now, every gaze was lifted to him, waiting for a verdict. Elijah scanned the room, his eyes, sharp as a microscope, read every layer of hypocrisy, every twitching face straining beneath the pressure of fear. And then, he spoke. I know, there are a lot of questions right now. Why someone like me, a security guard, is standing in this position? Why did I spend the past 2 weeks in this uniform, unnoticed by all of you? He paused, his eyes swept slowly across the room. The answer is simple. I wanted to see this company through the eyes of someone without privilege. I wanted to know how you treat people when you don't know who they are. A quiet gulp sounded from Travis's direction. Clara's hands clenched tightly, her lips trembled uncontrollably. Elijah remained calm, but his voice grew colder. I was told to stand outside because I was damaging the company's image. I had hot coffee thrown at me in the main lobby, and no one stepped in. I was called a wanderer, ridiculed by the very people now sitting at executive desks. He paused again. This time, his eyes locked onto Travis. Mr. Beckett, do you remember what you said when you saw me in the lobby? The front entrance isn't meant for people like me. Isn't that right? Travis opened his mouth, but his throat was too dry to make a sound. Elijah turned to Clara. Ms. Jensen, I remember how you made sure I understood Valortech's standards. Especially the part where you threw a cup of coffee on the marble table, in front of more than a dozen people, and told me to clean it up. Like a dog, isn't that correct? Clara staggered half a step back, face chalk white, her fingers digging into the edge of her handbag. Elijah took a deep breath. His voice no longer belonged to someone who had been humiliated. It was the voice of someone presiding over a courtroom. I don't say these things for revenge. I say them so everyone understands. I don't want you to fear me because I'm the CEO. I want to know, if I were still just a security guard, would you still be willing to respect me? Blank. Underscore. Blank. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The air in the lobby remained frozen. Elijah stood among hundreds of people. But for the first time in weeks, he wasn't alone. Because every gaze, finally, had to face him. No more avoidance. No more pretending. He turned toward Travis Beckett, the head of operations, the man who had once banished him from the main floor, called him a wanderer, mocked him like Elijah was just some punchline to bolster his bravado. Mr. Beckett, Elijah called out, loud and clear, causing Travis to stiffen. That day, when I was standing in the lobby, you asked me, where do you think you belong? So now I'll ask you, if you had known I was the chairman's son, the future CEO, would you have still told me to leave? The entire lobby held its breath. Travis swallowed hard. His throat tightened. He tried to respond, but his lips only quivered, unable to form sound. Answer the question, Beckett. Elijah didn't raise his voice, but each word landed like a blade across the man's pride. I didn't know. Travis tried to stand tall. I didn't mean anything by it. Exactly, Elijah said, his voice sharp. You didn't know who I was. And that's why you treated me that way. The truth, so simple, rippled through the room like a thunderclap. You weren't cruel out of rage. You were indifferent, because you believed I had no power to resist. Then Elijah turned toward the staircase. Clara Jensen still stood there, frozen. Her lips were trembling, eyes darting, unsure where to land. Ms. Jensen, Elijah said, and her whole body shuddered. Do you remember the coffee incident? Do you remember what you said? There's no place for someone like you here. Then you threw the coffee on the marble table and made me clean it. In front of everyone. Now tell me, if you knew I was the CEO, would you have thrown that cup in front of me? Clara gasped. One hand clutched the railing like it was the only thing holding her upright. I didn't know. I just thought you were a guard? Exactly. Elijah nodded. You thought I was just a guard. And that alone made you believe you had the right to trample me. So tomorrow, when you meet a new janitor, will you treat them differently? Or will you still throw your coffee as if it's a perk of your status? That question needed no answer. Clara's ashen face said everything. Elijah paused for a beat, then turned his gaze across the entire lobby. It wasn't just Travis. It wasn't just Clara. I saw every glance, every time I was mistreated, every head turned, every smirk when I wiped up spilled coffee. Not one of you asked, "Are you okay?" Not one. Except one person. Every head slowly turned toward Linda, standing quietly near the IT department. The young woman with soft curls and a simple suit, her eyes now welling with tears. Elijah smiled gently. "Linda, you didn't have to do anything grand. You just didn't turn away. And that alone made you different from this entire building." Linda raised a hand to wipe her eyes. A few people nearby lowered their heads. Elijah turned back to the crowd. His voice was low, but firm with authority. "I wore a security uniform. And none of you ever saw me as a human being. I stood at the door. And none of you ever let me in with your eyes. Now I've stepped inside. And I'm not stepping back out. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Blank. Underscore. Blank." The atmosphere in Valortech's lobby felt like a courtroom without a jury. The only one with the authority to judge stood before them. Still in his security uniform, but with eyes sharper than any power tie ever worn in that building. Elijah Moore, the new CEO. The man was once dismissed as unfit for the company's image. Now preparing to deliver the first decision of his term. And the first name he called. He was the one who once believed he held all the power. "Travis Beckett," Elijah said, his voice echoing through the expansive lobby. "How many years of experience do you have managing corporate operations?" "I believe almost 10 years. Travis answered, voice trembling. "Good. Then I assume, with that much experience, you understand what is unacceptable in modern corporate culture. You judged me, not by my ability, but by my appearance. You expelled me from the lobby, mocked me in front of subordinates. You used me to project your dominance. And that has no place in a company that bears my name." Elijah paused and turned to look at his father, Chairman Nathaniel Moore. The powerful man gave a single nod, silent, but full of approval. Elijah continued, "Travis Beckett, effective immediately. You are no longer part of Valor Tech. Your internal access will be revoked. Your keycard has been deactivated. And my sincere advice, leave on your own feet, before you're escorted out." The lobby was utterly silent. Travis, the man who once strutted through the hallways like royalty, stood frozen. His face ashen, his lips quivered. "Elijah, no, sir, please, give me a chance. I didn't know. I was just acting like I always do." Elijah's voice was cold. "Exactly. Because your everyday behavior is exactly the reason. You won't be allowed to stay one more day." As soon as the words landed, 2 security staff stepped forward. Travis hesitated, lowered his head, and walked away, surrounded by the same stares that once celebrated him as a leader. Elijah turned toward the staircase. Clara Jensen, the blonde woman, who once threw coffee, who once commanded Elijah like a nameless tool, now clutched the handrail, trying to steady herself. Elijah looked at her without rage, only clarity. "Ms. Jensen," he began slowly, "you led human resources, a role meant to uphold dignity, fairness, and ethics. But what I witnessed was power abuse, demeaning language, and intimidation." Clara shook her head, voice strained. "I was just following protocol. I acted according to long-standing company standards. I didn't know." "Exactly," Elijah cut in. "You didn't know. And that's the problem. You judged people based on the badges they wore. But the one thing you never bothered to see was the person behind it. Ms. Clara Jensen, effective today. Your role as head of human resources is terminated. And I believe the people you once barked orders at deserve to witness this moment." Clara broke down, not from remorse, but from shock, and the loss of power. The thing she once believed belonged only to her. Elijah inhaled deeply, scanning the entire crowd. "I didn't come here to clean house with authority. I came to reboot a system. A system that had rotted from ridicule, condescension, and the silence of the many." He paused. "And I'll begin by recognizing those who dared not remain silent. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Blank. Underscore. Blank. After Travis and Clara exited, beneath the heavy gazes of hundreds of employees, a new kind of silence settled over the lobby. No more tension. No more fear. Only anticipation. A glimmer of hope. Elijah slowly stepped back to the center of the lobby. Still in his security uniform, a deliberate choice. He didn't need a tailored suit to declare his new role. Because the very people who once looked down on that uniform, today, were the ones looking up. He scanned the room, then paused toward the left side, where Linda stood, still holding her notebook, eyes brimming with tears. Linda. He called her name clearly. Come up here with me. The whole lobby seemed to hold its breath for a beat. Linda looked startled, not used to being the focus of a building full of eyes. The quiet, humble AI engineer, the one who had handed Elijah a bottle of water in the rain, who had softly apologized when she saw him being mistreated, who had never looked away when witnessing injustice. No one noticed her then. No one clapped for her. But today, everyone would see her for what she truly was, worthy of respect. Linda stepped forward, tears glistening. Elijah smiled and reached out, not with the handshake of a CEO, but with the open palm of a teammate. Linda, you were the only person in this company who, among countless indifferent stares, stopped. You didn't need to know who I was. You didn't care what title I held. You simply saw a human being, and treated me like one. He turned to address the crowd. This is the greatest lesson of all. It doesn't take a grand speech. It doesn't take a heroic act. Sometimes, a small kindness at the right moment can change an entire company culture. Then he looked back at Linda, his voice steady, carrying the weight of something significant. My second decision as CEO is this. I am promoting Linda Harper to lead AI strategist. Because I believe this is the kind of beginning that's worthy of a leader. Someone who sees people with their heart, not their title. The first applause of the day erupted, roaring, uncontainable. The same people who had once ridiculed Elijah now clapped for Linda, not because she was the best, but because she had been the bravest. Linda wept, bowed her head slightly, and whispered, I only did what anyone should have done. Elijah placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Exactly. But because what everyone should do, no one did. That's why you deserve to stand here today. Blank. Blank. The applause slowly faded. Linda stepped down, moved by emotion, while Elijah remained at the center. The very spot where he had once been dismissed for ruining the aesthetic. He held his head high. And this time, his voice was neither cold, like when delivering justice, nor soft, like when honoring courage. It was the voice of a man rewriting the core principles of an empire. I know many of you are wondering, was today about me? A moral lesson? Or an act of revenge? He shook his head, his gaze unwavering. No, today was just the beginning. A first step toward ending the days when people believed they could mistreat others. Just because they assumed no one was watching. I was watching. And now, I will no longer stay silent. The entire lobby was riveted, as if each sentence were a key unlocking doors long believed permanently shut. From this day forward, Valor Tech will no longer be a place that judges people by their skin color, job title, or the shoes they wear. From now on, respect will not be requested. It will be required. A few people in the back began to nod. Those who once remained silent felt something stir within. We will establish an independent internal ethics committee with the authority to investigate and take action against discrimination, abuse of power, or toxic behavior. Every employee, from intern to executive, will be retrained in workplace culture, centered on dignity. No exemptions, no special privileges. He paused, letting each word sink in, then continued. If any of you turned away when someone else was humiliated, you may feel shame today. But I'm not here to condemn the past. I'm here to create a chance for change. In a far corner of the lobby, an elderly janitor stood just behind the glass wall, motionless. She had once witnessed Elijah being splashed with coffee, had heard Clara insult him, but had stayed quiet. Now she watched him as if seeing justice she once believed only existed in books. Elijah looked around the room one last time. I don't need anyone to bow their heads. All I ask is that you raise them and start again. Because from now on, This is no longer a company for those who sit at the top. It is a company for those who know how to stand together. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Pushpin. End of part 11. Not a policy. Not a PR slogan. Not a glossy campaign. This was a revolution. A declaration, not just to reform corporate culture, but to awaken something deeper in each person. The courage to be kind. Elijah was not just the new CEO. He was the one who reignited the light in a company long overshadowed by arrogance. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Would you like to continue with part 12 epilogue? Or have this entire series compiled as a YouTube video script, screenplay, or professional voiceover narration? Here is the complete English translation of part 12, the epilogue. Preserving the cinematic emotion, reflective tone, and quiet power of your original finale. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Elijah Moore stepped down from the podium. The entire lobby remained still, as if trying to hold on to that sacred moment just a little longer. No one spoke, but everyone had changed. The eyes no longer avoided. Bows of the head were now gestures of respect, not of guilt or shame. Employees who once thought, "That's not my business," were now asking themselves, "What would I do next time if I saw something like that again?" Elijah walked slowly toward his father, Nathaniel Moore, founder of the company. Nathaniel had remained silent throughout the entire announcement, his expression stoic, but his eyes full of pride and something else, regret. "Dad," Elijah said, soft but firm, "I did what Mom always hoped. Not to punish, but to transform." Nathaniel placed a hand on his son's shoulder, gently, then tightened his grip, and then he extended his hand, in front of the entire company. A simple handshake, no speech, no camera flashes, yet that handshake marked the beginning of a new era. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Camera with flash. That image would later be framed in the grand lobby of Valor Tech, beneath a steel engraved plaque that read, "Respect is not given by title. It is earned through how you treat those with none." Blank. Underscore. Blank. Days later, a short video was posted on Valor Tech's homepage. It opened with a shot of Elijah walking to the podium, and his voice echoed, "If you've ever been dismissed for being different, don't think you're alone. Your silence doesn't mean you're weak. Because when the time is right, truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to walk in and stand tall." Sparkle's Linda Harper, now leading the AI engineering team, walked through the hallway with her squad. A newly hired security guard bowed to her as she passed, and she returned the gesture with a warm, genuine smile. Sparkles, a former manager, who had once stayed silent during the coffee incident, was now attending corporate ethics retraining. After the session, he stood up and said aloud, "I once looked away, but now I know. Turning back around matters even more." Sparkles Elijah Moore still arrived at work each morning on his old motorcycle. Still wore his security uniform once a week. So he'd never forget. A title doesn't define a person. Their actions do. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Blank. Underscore. Blank. This isn't just the story of Elijah Moore. It's the story of everyone who's ever been underestimated because of humble beginnings, the color of their skin, or the small title on their name badge. It's a wake-up call to those who believe power gives them the right to be arrogant. And it's a beam of light for those who've felt forgotten. A reminder that justice does come, if we're patient enough not to fall. Speech balloon. Have you ever been judged by your appearance? Have you ever stayed silent while someone else was treated unfairly? Share your story in the comments. Because maybe, just maybe, your voice could inspire someone who needs it the most. Loudspeaker. And if you believe that every human being, regardless of title, deserves respect, like, share, and subscribe to this channel, so you never miss a story that could awaken hearts and shake entire systems. Sparkles. Because change doesn't begin with a scream. Change begins with one person brave enough to stand. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Dot.